Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I've gotten some feedback from the episode 80 of the Arizona Archery Elk season recap, and some of the feedback was that people thought that we did not have a good hunt, and I would just like to speak to that for a second. Hopefully, in these recap episodes, you understand and realize that just coming off of those elk seasons, all of the recap and the emotions are raw. And there are some things that are discussed in the episodes that are just right off the cuff and just exactly how I feel or I felt at the time. And so, we had an incredible time. 30 days of elk hunting in Arizona. Can't get much better than that. Some of the things we talk about in the episode with some of the human interference and such, I got some feedback on that. And all I have to say is, I think as sportsmen, we just have to watch how we treat other people out in the field. And it seems as this season was a highlight, or it brought to light a lot of things that it kind of all came to a head. And I just think it's important as these Coues deer hunts are about to kick off in Arizona, and some of these mule deer hunts and what have you, late season elk hunts. Um, you know, Guys, there's more to it than killing a big animal. If that's all you're in it for, then the reality is probably just turn the podcast off and don't listen anymore, because there's way more to hunting than inches. And even though I'm a big proponent of being accurate and being able to field judge, correctly and accurately, and be able to, uh, you know, know what you're looking at and be able to score once the animal's on the ground, that's all great. But guys, in my mind, it seems the older I get, the more important things are spending time in God's creation, spending time with your family and friends, uh, getting an animal down and getting meat on the table to feed your family throughout the whole year. And you can't eat those antlers, you can't eat those horns. And I think all of us need to take a little bit of a time and reflect on what is important. And I saw something yesterday that I thought was pretty cool. One of my friends on Facebook said something about he made a point this year he was going to make hunting fun again. And I can relate to that. I think it's important that we all remember why we're doing this. And everybody wants to kill big stuff. And don't get me wrong, I will continue to pursue trophy animals, and I will continue to push myself and do the best I can in the field and try and be as selective as I can and find the largest animals for my clients and myself when I have a tag. But let's all keep it in perspective. I know I have to keep it in perspective. Many, many times I have to ground check myself and realize why I'm out there. So just wanted to touch on that. I've also gotten some emails about the Coues deer season in Arizona's coming up here real quick, the October hunts. And I've gotten some questions about tips on the October hunts. And one thing I would say is uh, in Arizona, we still have warm temperatures, and those Coues deer in October are typically going to be seeking shade as quickly as possible. And if we get some storms that come in and it rains and get some cooler weather, they'll be out and feeding a little bit more. But what Dar and I have noticed on early season Coues hunts is they're going to be on those northeast facing slopes a lot of the time. They are going to be in areas where they can get good solid shade. They're going to be in the canopy where they've got the shade the most. Now, one of the things about a year like this year is there's quite a bit of feed and water, for that matter, all over, and so they don't have to travel as much from their bedding area to where they're going to feed. And sometimes they're up and feeding right where they're bedding. if you coos deer hunters out there are listening, how many times have you seen them get up out of their bed and stand for 30 minutes and feed within maybe a 5 to 10 yard circle and then lay back down? So I think it's important that you need to spend a lot of time behind your binoculars. I think that's obvious, but one of the most important times in my mind, especially when it's warm out, is between 10 and 2. And so I had someone ask me, why is that between 10 and 2? And the answer is it's so warm that, and the sun is moving a great distance throughout the day. So they bed down, and 2 hours later, where they're laying is completely in the sun. So what do they do most of the time? They get up, and a lot of times they get up, they shift around, and they lay back down. But I've seen them a lot of times where they'll stand up for 5 minutes. They'll stretch, um, they'll go to the bathroom, and then they'll kind of feed around and then shift back and bed back down. A lot of times between 10 and 2, you can catch bucks, especially um, up changing positions. So make sure you're glassing between 10 and 2. Also, those October hunts are not very long. So get out there early. Stay late, get out there early, get your headlamps, stay in there, deep in there, and catch every last bit of light that you can. We wait all year for these tags, and it would just be too bad if you give up 5 minutes early and you're walking out and your buck that you were after that you didn't see all day all of a sudden stands up. So um, focus on those north and northeast facing slopes. Focus on the thick canopy, and hopefully that will help you out. The nice thing about October and November, for that matter, early season hunts is a lot of times they'll be bedded with 3, 4, 5 bucks in a group. So if you're seeing a couple little bucks, keep your eye out, because a lot of times those big bucks are just laying a little bit longer than the smaller bucks. So, guys, I want to thank you for your support of my podcast. It's humbling and completely overwhelming how many of you are listening, and I just want to thank you so much for your support. And I get emails and Facebook messages and Instagram messages every day with people with questions and people with comments, and I appreciate that so much and appreciate the support. And um, I want to thank my sponsors, GoHunt.com and DeadeyeOutfitters.com. Their support has been so strong, and I wanted to remind you guys that GoHunt.com Insiders October giveaway is a coos deer hunt with Dark Holborn and I in Sonora, Mexico. And we will be going down on January 7th, traveling down, and we will be hunting for 7 full days. If we get in early enough, we'll hunt that afternoon of the 7th. We're going to hunt the 8th through the 14th, 7 full days. The deer should be rutting. It should be a fantastic time. We've got some great ranches leased, and great properties. And there's about a 2-3 week period there where the deer are really rutting, and this is kind of on the front end of the rut. And some of the biggest bucks we've taken over the years have been on this hunt. And then the second hunt is a primarily lots of movement and lots of rutting, but I would rather be right on the front end of the rut and then right into the peak of the rut. And so this hunt that GoHunt.com Insider is giving away is they're giving away 2 spots. And all you have to do is be an Insider member to win. Now, keep in mind, GoHunt.com Insider has already given away a Dall sheep hunt, mule deer hunts, antelope hunts, and all kinds of gear, Sunto watches, and just all kinds of things. Every month they have giveaways. And I'm going to be doing an episode here pretty quick with a guy that won the Dall sheep hunt, And that's a $22,000 hunt that GoHunt.com is giving away just for being an insider member. So, I mean, your odds on some of these giveaways are outstanding. Um, so this is a $5,500 value. Lorenzo, I mean, this isn't one of these buddy deals where they paid half price for a hunt. And this is they paid full boat, 5,500 plus $1,000 of travel money. So it's a $6,500 value. And if you haven't hunted coos deer during the rut, it's just a complete hoot. It's just funner than anything. And hunting any animal during the rut is awesome. So go to gohunt.com to see the details of the giveaway. But basically you have until the end of October, and you can go on the website to check the exact dates of the giveaway to become an insider member. And all the insider members will have a chance, one chance to win the hunt. They're going to give away two of them, and Lorenzo is also going to be on the hunt. So it's going to be an awesome time. Go to gohunt.com /insider. Click on the blue Join Now button if you're not an insider member. Make sure to use the J Scott promo code, and you will actually get a $50 KUIU gift card and when you sign up to be an insider member. And guys, I just want to thank you guys again for all your support. We're on the road here to 1 million downloads, and to me that's just it's almost unthinkable. And so let's get right to the episode. This is part 2 recap with Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources. And I want to thank Chris again for being on the podcast. And guys, we're right in the middle of our fall season here. Let's give it 110%. And let's be courteous to our fellow hunters, our fellow sportsmen. And, think of what you're doing out there, and think of how is it impacting your fellow hunter. And let's try and be as courteous as we can. So let's get right to the episode. Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got part 2 of Chris and I's, Chris Rowe, Rowe Hunting Resources, and I's conversation about the 2015 Arizona Elk season, a little bit of a recap. And we left off with talking about trail cameras, and I have a lot of dear friends that ran trail cameras for this season, and I want to be clear that I'm not pointing fingers at anyone that runs trail cameras. I'm just looking at it from more of a broader spectrum of, how far are we going to take this, guys? And, like we talked about in the last episode, when you pull up to a trick tank and there's, 8 to 12 cameras on the fence post, on the wire, and you realize that everybody's, they're going to check those probably every other day. So you add 8 to 10 people on a different schedule checking those cameras. You've got complete interference with that area. So driving in, driving out, driving in, driving out, driving in, driving out. And I say that over and over and over just to drive home the point that, what we've done with these trail cameras, and the same things to be said on the Arizona Strip. I'm going to be going up there this year with Dar's son, and every one of these water catchments has 8 to 15 cameras on it. And what we do is I think we cause a lot of these animals to be nocturnal. I think we cause a lot of these animals to be very shy to coming into water. And then the next part of me says, well, golly, Arizona's arid as it is. Let them go get a drink of water. That's part of being alive and living. And, I don't want to sound like I'm on my soapbox, but I think this year more than ever, it kind of drove home to me that as humans, how far have we taken this? We went from wanting to gather a little intel and a little information to, fighting over this stuff. And, it seems as though we've gone too far. One thing I thought of is, why can't the Game and Fish, or why can't a private individual say, I'm going to put a trail camera up on every single water source. I'm going to charge a membership fee, and everybody has the same data so that we don't have to go into those spots and check them and check them and check them and check them. And basically what ends up happening is you end up ruining that water hole. You end up ruining that wallow. You end up ruining that trick take for anybody that wants to sit it during daylight hours and hunt it. And you get fights. You get guys sitting in a blind. You get other guys saying, you're sitting in my blind, or didn't you see my tree stand? And part of me says, golly, maybe we should just go back to glassing them up, listening to them, spot and stalk, and trying to find them the old-fashioned way. Is trying to kill an animal that's big that important that you have to interfere with everybody else's hunt? Well, what do you think, Chris? I mean,
and that's where I agree. I will agree with you, but then I'll disagree with you a little bit. I don't mind the fact, and I know you just brainstormed that, or probably just brainstormed that suggestion, but can you imagine if, say, for instance, a neutral third party published the pictures off of a game camera, and can you imagine the first night a 400-inch bull shows up at a water hole, the next morning there's going to be 25 guys there all at the same time? You want to talk about fights? Oh my God!
But there is anyway. Well, I mean, I know that's what we've come to anyway. It's like,
and I guess that's where I don't mind. I really don't mind the fact that there's 15 game cameras on the water hole. My issue is how people go about utilizing them, because what they don't realize is you don't. And I know, and this is another controversy, but whether or not elk react to the sound of a vehicle versus react to the sound of you walking or the scent of you, whatever. If you're going to drive in to a water hole, that bull in Arizona, at least in this area, most of the time, most of the water holes are not where the bulls are bedding. They're going to be bedding off a little ways from that water source. But if you're running a side-by-side, or you're running a four-wheeler, or you're taking your truck, you can hear that from a long distance away. Whereas if you're just sneaking in on foot, you're not going to hear that. And so I think how these guys are checking their game cameras is what is actually hurting them and making it more difficult for them to actually capitalize on what they see in the game camera. Because 8 guys going in to check 8 different cameras on their four-wheeler or side-by-side. Going in there, that bull all day long is going to hear down at the water source. So no, he's not going to come in until it's almost dark. Whereas if they would just park maybe 100 or 200 yards or maybe a quarter mile from the water source, and sneak in on foot, quiet as a mouse, go in, check a card, turn around, and just sneak out, that bull never hears anything. He doesn't know any better. Now, obviously, if the wind is wrong and you're going in there and your scent is going around, but just by sound alone, if people were going in and sneaking in, checking it, sneaking back out, that would do wonders. But people don't. People are lazy. They're going to drive their four-wheeler in there. Because the argument is, well, that the elk are used to hearing vehicles. No, they are used to hearing vehicles. They are not used to hearing 18 million vehicles all day long for 3 weeks. Yeah, you're going to hear vehicles in the summer, occasionally here and there. But come season, the amount of vehicle traffic just goes through the roof exponentially. And it's all summer long, you don't have 18 vehicles going to the stock tank. They're running the main roads. The elk get used to a predictable pattern of travel on the main roads where people are going from point A to point B, not into these little back, hidden areas and dead-end roads and these little out-of-the-way places. So if people would just change how they check these cameras and when, and again, I'm telling you, and I don't know who it was, and I'm not trying, again, I'm not throwing stones at anybody in particular because I don't know who they are. But to me, it seemed like there were actual people in there that were not hunting, that were purposely going into water sources during prime time hours, or they're driving down through feeding areas, they're driving through valleys, or they're going through these areas in prime time hours. You know darn well that you're disturbing those elk, but you don't have a hunter in there. Well, there might be someone else hunting there. So
Yeah.
I think it did really get into a situation of combat hunting where as long as I get mine, I don't care what I do. But the problem is what I think people don't realize is, say I'm not even an outfitter. Say I'm a person that has a tag, and I have 5 of my buddies come down to help me. And throughout my hunt, my 5 buddies go out and they do all these game cameras. Well, if one of my buddies finds a good elk in one of these areas, if my buddy for the past week has been in there disturbing things 8 ways from Sunday, when I do find that animal, me going in there to try to get that animal is going to be so much more tough, more difficult. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. Yes, you ran a game camera. You know what animal's there. But now you just made it 10 times harder to kill that animal.
Yeah. And I think with all that being said, with the Grand Canyon National Park on the north boundary of Unit 9, I think Monty's top 25 list, that alone is an exact example of human interference, human pressure causes animals to change their pattern. They're already changing their pattern also because of moving after they go hardhorn. But I would bet that if we collared a bunch of those bulls that Monty was looking at, a bunch of them would be on the park. Why? Because they don't get interfered with in the park. They've got sanctuary area where they don't get, there's not every Tom, Dick, and Harry chasing them.
Well, and I would say we don't even have to collar them, because that's why I stayed extra days after the season ended. Now, that was the thing that for me kind of was a bummer. I needed to get back here and get ready for whitetail season in Kansas. We've got hunters coming in, and so I've got to get tree stands up, and I've got to find bucks and blah, blah, blah. So I had to leave. I had to get back here to start getting prepared for my whitetail stuff. But the season ended. What was the day the season ended?
October 1st.
Okay, there you go, October 1st. So I stayed, 4 or 5 days? Something. Anyway, I just got back. So I stayed a bunch of days after the season closed. And I'll tell you, you're absolutely right. A lot of people spent some time, especially those last several days, up along the boundary of that park, trying to see, just hearing what bulls are up there and finding out what activities up there. And yeah, most of those elk were bedding up in the national park. And when the national park had moisture, when it had water, they never left it. It wasn't until the last several days of season when everything really started drying out. I think the water started drying up in the park, which made elk leave at night to come out into the national forest, into the public land, go get water. But again, by the next morning, they were already in the park where we can't go by shooting light. Well, I can tell you, I spent those next several mornings and evenings up along that park boundary because I did specifically say, and I told you this, I want to see how fast things change. For instance, one thing that I've seen with whitetails here in Kansas is if you go in and you significantly disturb an area, say you have a whitetail buck and a group of does utilizing a certain area. If you go in and significantly disturb it, and then you remove yourself from that disturbance, if those animals leave, if it's a good area and that they want to come back, it usually takes about 3 to 5 days for those animals to come back, to get into a cycle and actually be there. So 3 to 5 days. You disturb it, they're going to leave. It's not for another 3 to 5 days before they're going to come back and you have another opportunity at them. I wanted to see with the elk, okay, we've had this disturbance. We know that just a pile of animals went into the park where they can't be chased, where they had sanctuary. They had food, cover, and water. There was no need for them to leave. How long does it take for them to move? Now, granted, the park part started to dry up, and so they had to leave and come down into the national forest to get water. The question I had was, are they going to go back to the park and bed, or are they going to stay in the national forest part? Because there's great bedding area all through that country. Well, it did not take 3 days. Within a day, boom, we had elk bugling behind camp, right on the main road that had all the camps. Within a day, all those camps were gone. And that night, elk started bugling. The next day, they were really bugling, and literally within almost immediately, once the pressure was released, those animals started coming out of the park, and they didn't go back to the park. I found elk all over that northern end, and elk, they just didn't go back to the park. They stayed. So you can...
Yeah, and they're probably rutting like crazy right now because nobody's bothering them.
Well, and exactly. But now they can go back to being relaxed and being in places where people could actually chase them. That to me told me this was not a population dynamic issue. It wasn't an age class issue. It wasn't a sex ratio issue. This was a pressure issue. Yes, this area has a bunch of roads. Yes, the elk are used to people traveling the roads. But what they're not used to is all the excessive pressure in all these little out-of-the-way places constantly, and it just simply pushed them into the national park or into the reservation or wherever, pushed them into those places where we can't go as public land hunters. We can't go there. But literally, as soon as the pressure was off, boom, they bailed right back out.
One of the things that I would, people will just hate this comment, but I don't really care. I would be all for if the Game and Fish said, okay, well, they've tried to do travel management plans and road closures and blah, blah, that doesn't work. Okay. But if they said the main roads, so like in Unit 9, like the 302, the 307, the 688, the main like gravel, cinder, like maintained Forest Service roads were open, any other 2-track that's not a maintained road, I would love it. And I would love it probably across this state. If they just said those are the only roads that are open, if you're caught not on those roads, you're going to get a ticket.
Yeah,
if you see your fellow hunter on those roads, you can turn them in. And, people are going to send me hate mail and all that. But what is wrong with walking in 1.5 miles to some of these areas and having elk where you can enjoy them instead of having in Unit 9 every half mile there's a 2-track. So you walk 1 mile, you cross 2 tracks where people drive quads or side-by-sides, and these animals get just pressured out the wazoo. And, it just goes to show, man, us humans overdo everything. Everything we do, we overdo. We think we're doing ourselves a favor by putting in all these roads and all these 2-trackers, and we're really just, ultimately screwing up the hunt for everybody else. Chris, I want to shift gears, and I got to tell you about Vince and I's opening morning and what I witnessed. And I don't tell this story other than just to bring a little bit of light and kind of laugh and chuckle about what we saw. And I'm sure you have a few experiences too in Arizona and other states. So opening morning of archery elk season, Vince, my hunter, and I, we set off early to go to an area where I had seen a pretty good bull before the season. We parked back about 3/4 mile and we walked in the dark, no headlamps, walked in the dark, and got to the meadow, so to speak, the area where I had seen a good bull in my scouting. And we're sitting there, and the elk had kind of bugled a few times, and a truck pulls up. This is no joke. There's a road that we can see maybe 250 yards, 200 yards away. The truck pulls up, does not turn off his headlights, does not turn off the truck, and is standing on the brake. So it's pitch black dark. You've got red lights out the back. You've got the headlights out the front, and the truck is running. Rolls down the window, sticks the bugle out, and goes, doodly doodly. Listens for maybe a 10 count. Nothing. Sticks the cow call out. Wah! 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 Listens for maybe a 5 count. Brake comes off. Red lights go off. Boom, boom, driving down the road. And Vince looks at me and he says, "Did that just happen?" I said, "Oh yeah, welcome to Arizona." Not more than 2 minutes goes by. A side-by-side 4-seater Ranger or something of that matter pulls up on the same road and literally stops in the same spot. Does turn the machine off. The headlights are still on. He's standing on the brake, so the red lights are shining. And hits a Fox Pro. Diddly-diddly. Nothing answers. Then proceeds to the Fox Pro cow call. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing answers. Starts the machine up, drives off. That happened all within a matter of 5 minutes. We sat there in the dark listening. About 2 or 3 minutes later, the bulls started bugling. And Vince was just like, "I can't believe that just happened." And I said, we should have videotaped that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The guy is bugling out of the truck, and the truck's on.
Yeah.
Then the side-by-side pulls in, and the lights are still on, and he's bugling. We're just training these elk to go, oh, the cavalry is here,
Yeah.
Let's shut up. And it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah. And this, again, I know, I don't even know if I should even say anything because well, the problem is obviously my entire website is to help people learn how to be better at elk calling and elk hunting. So obviously it sounds self-serving if I complain and say their resources are out there. If someone wants to, I don't know. I saw the same thing, man. I don't know if people expect Unit 9 to be, or Arizona to be different. There is, I will say there is the stigma, not stigma, maybe, I don't know, maybe just expectation that, oh, Arizona is stupid. Oh my gosh, there's so many bulls and they're screaming and they're everywhere. Oh man, you can just drive down the road and they're bugle. Okay, yeah, that might be the case, and I can say that might have been the case in the past. I don't know. We'll see, because you and I talked about how many tags they've given out in Unit 9 these past several years, and kind of the difference in management philosophy that Arizona has for it. But that may have been the case in the past, but just because, okay, this is the other thing, too, that people need to realize. Just because you heard a bull bugle from the truck on the road, number one, does not mean that, A, that was a good bull, big bull, and number two, does not mean that once you turn the truck off and you go after him, that, oh, you're going to be able to get on him and kill him. That bull, number one, we've said this how many times? I've said it, and I've got video footage, and you saw it this year. Well, how many times did Vince and his buddies say this, where you heard a bull and it sounded like just this little squeal? Oh, that sounds like a small bull. I don't want to go after it. And then it turns out that's a 360 bull. Or vice versa, you hear this bull and just this huge growly roar, and you get in there and it's a 5x5. So you cannot necessarily tell the size of a bull by his bugle. So if you're parked on the road and you stick your bugle out the window and you bugle, and all of a sudden a bull responds, A, it you don't know if that's a mature bull or a young bull. It could be just a young, ignorant bull that's like, ha, yeah, I'll respond to you. Okay? Number one. Number two, sometimes the reason why the bull bugled is because his cows are leaving. The cows are like, uh-oh, it's time to go. We need to get out of here. And the cows start going. The bull's like, uh-oh, where are my ladies going? Meow. He's going to scream after his ladies because he's wanting to keep up with them. He wants to let everybody know where he's going, and he's going to be following those girls. But by the time you park your truck, you turn it off, you get all your stuff ready, you get your gear all lined up, that bull is headed out, not because the bull is doing anything, but because those cows are saying, we are out of here. We're done. We're gone. Bye-bye. And now you're on a chase for the next mile, 2 miles of over hill, over dale, trying to keep up with them, when if you had just turned the truck off down the valley a little bit, or even if you just stop there, turn the truck off, just go dark, just turn it off, turn the lights off, and then just sit and don't say a word. Turn it off, shut up, and then let things settle down. Boom. There's, like you said, okay, several minutes later, boom, a bull bugles over here. Okay, there's one. Oh, there's another bull bugle. Oh, there's another one over there. Okay, there's another one. Okay, and I can hear some hoof tracks going through the rocks and the sagebrush. All right. You let things settle down, just sit silently. You will hear things start talking without as much disturbance. And it just, again, it goes to how you do things, not that you are doing things. So,
Chris, absolutely. Let's take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors.
Guys, GoHunt.com Insider is the title sponsor of this podcast. Get everything you need in one spot. Join Insider today. Find and plan your hunts more effectively than ever. Complete state coverage. See detailed information for every unit, every species, every hunt. Interactive maps. Quickly find hunts that meet your exact search criteria and explore them easily. Strategy articles. Learn new things and find hidden opportunities with exclusive articles. Species breakdowns. Top trophy units are hiding in plain sight. Find them with our statistics and historical data. Another great thing about GoHunt.com Insider is they have monthly giveaways that are worth $100,000 plus a year. Each month you will automatically be entered to win gear, tags, and hunts. That is if you're an Insider member. Past prizes include a $22,000 Doll sheep hunt, 3 Red Rock Precision rifles with a $21,000 value, 5 Zeiss Conquest HD binoculars with a $7,500 value. Not to mention this past July they gave away 4 hunts, an antelope hunt, 2 elk hunts, and a mule deer hunt. Join Insider today and get a $50 KUIU gift card. All you have to do is go to gohunt.com/insider, click on the blue Join Now button, use the promo code JScott at checkout, and GoHunt.com will send you a $50 KUIU gift card. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for being the title sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I hear what you're saying, and I don't want my listeners out there thinking that, I'm some grouchy grouch that's, picking on everybody. But I just want to shed some light on things that we witnessed and observed. And I got to say, those 2 instances of the opening morning, you know what my bet is? I bet you those 2 vehicles, my bet is they weren't even They weren't even actually the people with tags.
Probably right.
My bet is that they were the helpers,
yes,
the scouters that are just out, and their buddy says, drive down this road and try and locate bugles.
Yeah.
Well, geez, guys, bugling out of a truck that is still on?
Yeah.
What does that serve other than you hear 3 bulls bugle out the window? Your truck's on. You can't tell what – you just know, I marked 3 bulls down and off I go. It's like, I mean –
well, and again, I'm glad you made that clarification, or I guess reiterated that. I'm not trying to complain or complain. Just that I'm not trying to complain because I'm upset with anything. I feel sad and I feel
embarrassed.
Well, yeah, but my issue with it is, guys, you can do it better and see more success. I want people to be successful. I want to see, rather than seeing, how many tags were in Unit 1, or excuse me, Unit 9, 100?
100.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would rather see 50 good bulls come out of Unit 9 and 50 of those hunters be successful rather than 20 or whatever it was. I would rather see more people be successful. So us talking about this is not just a complaint. It's just saying it can be done better, and you should, and you probably will see better results and better success out of it. But then I will go back to what you were just talking about and say and reiterate what I was saying earlier about the combat, or in part 1 about the combat hunting. I bet you're right. They're probably just assistants, but more importantly, they drove by your truck and saw your truck parked there. They knew that someone was in there hunting, but they didn't.
Well,
they didn't care.
And I was going to say a couple times, I like to go, and I like to go early, and I like to go places, and I like to stop and sit in the truck, total blackout, listening to Bulls Bugle. The other thing I like to do is get out of the truck, get up on a little high point, and listen to Bulls Bugle and try and make a plan for that morning. Had multiple instances where in there first, in a valley, in a drainage, in the spot, and come back to the truck after the morning hunt, and there'd be a vehicle, 75 yards, 100 yards, 50 yards, just past mine.
Yep.
So in other words, someone is coming, someone comes in, oh, there's a truck there. Oh, I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to park 50 yards, and this is where I'm going. This is my spot.
Yeah.
And, I had a lot of circumstances where I pull in, maybe someone's there, I go to another spot.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fact that they don't know the unit well enough that they don't know where to go, and it's like, oh no, it's getting light, what am I going to do? And I can understand that. But guys, come on. If a truck is in the spot, you don't go 50 yards or 100 yards past them and park, period. You do not do that.
Yeah. No.
And I saw it. My cousin had it happen to him. And it happens over and over and over. And honestly, is it the fact that A, people don't know that you don't do that? B, they don't care? Or C, they're just going to hunt there right over the top of you, whether you like it or not, and they figure, well, I'll pressure him and that guy will leave. And it's like, how bad does somebody want to kill something? So how far has man gone that you want to kill something so bad that you're willing to just screw up somebody else's hunt?
Oh, I guess maybe I'm cynical, but bad, far. I think, I've seen it. And I've talked to other people about it. I really think nowadays with social media, it is all about the grip and grin. It comes down to, I just need my picture with a big animal so I can be somebody. I don't remember if you and I were talking about it, but I remember as a kid in college, going hunting with guys, and there was a guy that literally, he would just get a bullet in him. That's it. His philosophy was either get an arrow in him or get a bullet in it. Doesn't matter. Just hit him and then track them and follow up and just keep shooting until they stop moving. And he wounded animal after animal after animal, and he'd come back to the dorm room. He's like, hey, I hit a deer. I need help, tracking it. And the first time you're like, all right, cool, let's go, and we all go. Don't find the animal. There's no blood trail. And so a couple days later, hey, I hit an animal. Help me track it. And we start going, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, we'll go help you this time. Well, that's all he would ever do. And so, but all he ever wanted to do was I just need to get a picture. Well, he was shunned. Nobody would ever go with him, share information with him. He was the most unethical, just crap hunter that nobody wanted anything to do with him. Well, the problem is we knew the backstory. We knew the quote unquote the behind the scenes of when he finally did kill a deer. It was a good one. We knew that there was 5 dead deer to that one animal. Well, the problem is with social media these days that we don't know. I don't know how many pictures I've seen where you look at the bull has his eyeball plucked out by ravens, It's bloated. Its legs are sticking out. But yet here he is with, the guy's got a picture with the antlers, and he's like, and he's got 687 likes on, his picture. Oh, awesome bull, big bull. But wait a minute. You obviously lost every ounce of meat on that animal. Obviously you made a bad shot or what. It doesn't matter. We see the grip and grin. We see the picture, and they're a hero because they shot a big animal. And I think that's where some of these people start getting lost in that, and they're just like, I gotta go, I gotta get mine. And the other flip side of that, though, is, it takes, 15, 20 years of putting in to draw Unit 9 and some of these other premium tags. So there is a pressure that I think people feel that they say, I'm going to get mine, dang it, because I've put in for 15 years, I've put in for 20 years, and this is my year. I've got to make something happen. Well, yeah.
Well, and I think on the flip side of that, though, Chris, is, they don't need to screw up someone else that's waited 15 or 20 years for the same tag.
I agree. I'm just saying that's probably the mentality that's going into it. But I really do think it is. And it's general society today where it's just, consideration for other people is not necessarily high on anybody's list of priorities. So anyway, we sound like we're sitting here complaining constantly, but I mean, it is something that we noticed very, very starkly. And I think it really did hurt a lot of people in being able to capitalize on some of the upper end bulls that were available for people to have.
Yeah. And I think, just coming off the season of 30 days, we're both pretty raw because it's just like we just saw, the battle was just fought, and you ask us our recap, and it's pretty raw.
Yeah.
It's pretty, the emotions are raw, and it's like right there. I had a great time hunting with Vince. Vince was able to harvest his 33rd bull.
That's crazy.
And
I mean, you think about that. I've killed a good number of bulls, but obviously I got a late start in life elk hunting. But my gosh, when you start thinking about that, he killed his 33rd bull. Who was it that we were sitting in camp and all of a sudden you got a text that said they killed their 50th bull before they were 50?
Yeah, so my friend Michael Park
gosh,
had shot, I believe, with me in 2009 was his 42nd elk with a bow, and he made a goal that he wanted to kill 50 by 50, and he accomplished that goal. We got the text that he had accomplished his 50 by 50, and
that's crazy.
Our mutual friend Casey Brooks, I think, has 65, and he's only 50 years old or 51 or 2 years old. As well. And, but it was very refreshing hunting with Vince, because, when he shot his bull, so the 12th evening of the hunt, we had gone out and it was like 5:30. We hadn't heard much. And we heard a bull and I nicknamed him the night before the Wolf, because this is how his bugle sounded. And I'll play a clip for you guys. I'll pull it off here and edit it in, but so the bugle was just like this. Sounded like a wolf. And I said, "That's Wolfie." And he said, "Yeah." He says, let's go see what he is. So, having no idea if he's big, little, or whatever, we hear that bull, and he's kind of on the move. He's quite a ways out there as it is, and so we're moving, trying to catch up with him, and he's moving, and he kind of joins in, and some smaller bulls start bugling, and so anyway, the Wolfie bull was kind of out on the outskirts, and I told Vince, I said, I'm going to stay here and keep him bugling. You slip in there and see what he is. So I'm kind of just keeping the whole group calling, and these two smaller bulls come in, and I kind of have a cool interaction with them, and I can tell the wolf bull is, Wolfie's bugling and carrying on, and I know Vince is in there pretty tight to him. And as soon as the two bulls kind of moved off, I kind of moved right towards Wolfie to kind of put a little bit of pressure, thinking that if he thought we were coming to him, that he might, close the distance. And apparently he was about 100 yards from Vince, and he was up on this ridge bugling like crazy, and he just turned. When I started moving closer, he turned and just ran right at Vince and came into 8 yards, and Vince drew back, and the bull kind of wheeled, and Vince just pinwheeled him. But you know what was cool about that hunt is when I came up to Vince and was said, how good a bull? He says, that was the 40th 6-point bull that I had in bow range. And Chris, it kind of floored me.
Yeah.
Because 40 seems like a big number. Of course, that was the 12th day of the hunt. But it kind of floored me that, here I am going through this hunt and honestly frustrated and kind of struggling mentally because we hadn't really gotten on the quality of bulls that I wanted to get on. And then my hunter says that was the 40th 6-point bull I've had in bow range. I counted. And I'm sitting there thinking, who am I to measure the success of a hunt over a number?
Yeah. Well,
and have the calling and interaction that we had and some of the great encounters that we had, and Vince's buddy almost getting gored by a bull, which the video's on my Instagram, holding the decoy and having a bull just go crazy. And so it really floored me when he said that, because it was like 46-point bulls inside a bow range, and here I haven't found one over 370, and, somewhat not bummed out, but like, dang it, how come I can't find a good one? And it kind of really brought things full circle for me and put things in perspective. It's the biggest bull Vince has ever killed. He's tickled pink with it.
Yeah.
Sure, the first morning, that same morning when the 2 trucks came by, he passed probably the biggest bull of the hunt that he had a chance to pass was a 360 bull first morning within 15 minutes of opening light. It wasn't the bull that I had seen that we were going after. I saw one that was around 370, but he could have been done the first morning, and he's got a 360 bull, or he kills one on the 12th evening and he had 46-point bull. That's not even counting the small bull encounters.
Yeah.
But he had 46 points inside a bow range.
Well, and it doesn't. And the other thing too is that you're not telling is just how epic that whole day was. When we started out that morning, we had just an incredible. I mean, he spotted a bull that he thought was a giant, and you didn't have a chance to confirm it. I didn't see it, but he's like,
I was on the other side of the ridge, and he thought he saw a good bull with good backs, and so I got over to him, and he's like, Jay, it went into this thicket, and it has not come out. I said, are you sure? He says, it has not come out. And so I just put my binos on it and just, glued to that thicket. And then, you met up with Vince. I was able to get a hold of you, and you and Vince met up and went over there, and you called that bull right in. Turns out it wasn't as big as Vince thought, but it was bigger. It was a nice 6-point bull that came right in, and he's got great video of it with his iPhone at 10 yards.
Yeah. Well, and then so we leave that one. We're headed back to the truck, and this is where you and I don't say we're different, but I just love going in after bulls and just weaseling them out, And so in some of this terrain, you just can't. It's hard to get eyes on them because of the way the vegetation and the pinyon junipers are and everything. And I knew where there was what I thought. You cannot judge a bull by his bugle, but this one bull was always in this one area. He had a real deep growl voice. I've never laid eyes on him. And so we could either head back to camp or
it's like 10:30, right?
Yeah,
it was like 80 degrees, 10:30, and Chris is like,
let's go.
I've been hearing some bulls over here. Let's go dive into this pocket. And Vince and I look at each other like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, 'cause, normally, you go out and you do your morning hunt, and then, we were up at 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, and we're out by 4, and then we're out early in the. So when you talk about midday naps, my gosh, those midday naps are important because we're not getting to bed until like 9:30, 10 o'clock, so you don't get a lot of sleep. And so, this point, you're like, all right, let's head back to camp. And I'm like, you know what? We've got to drive right by these guys. I was up here in the morning. There was a bunch of bugling down. I said, let's just go. And so, like from 10 until noon, we dive into the pinyon juniper. And how many bulls did we call in? Like 5, 6 or so?
just a meatball of
It
bulls.
was awesome. It was, and so many of them were point blank range, and they were all, they're all great bulls, all 6x6s, or there was the one big 5x5 he said. But, it was just an epic, epic day. And then to cap it off that night with an experience like that, it's like, yeah, exactly. What are you going for? Are you going there simply because you want inches? You have to have an X number amount of inches of bone on an animal's head. Or are you putting in for 15 years or 17 years or 20 years or whatever to have an experience like you've never had before, where in Vince's case, you've got 40 6x6 bulls. And when we say 6x6 bulls, we're not talking about 260 class 6x6s. We're talking, you're talking your 320 to 350 bulls. You're talking 40 6x6 bulls in 12 days. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is awesome, and I think it's, as much as I can sit here and be raw after the hunt and complain about the hunt and complain about, human interaction and other hunters and just some of the things that people think about when they're doing some crazy stuff. And not that I haven't done crazy stuff before and screwed somebody else up, but I dang sure don't do it on purpose. But you realize how good Arizona really is, and I think that's one of the things that also grounded me is, Vince said some of the bugling interaction and some of the encounters is some of the best he's ever had. And he's like, I still can't believe how many elk are here. And I think, having hunted in Arizona as long as I have, I think it's easy to get jaded, and it's easy to not realize how good it actually is, and how good to go out every single morning and every single evening and have good interactions and good call-ins, and it's hard to beat. And I think I need to eat a little of that humble pie a little bit and realize that Arizona still, with all the stuff that we've discussed, is still pretty darn good. Chris, let's take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors again.
Guys, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors of this podcast. DeadeyeOutfitters.com is a lifestyle hunting apparel company for hunters, by hunters. Check out episode 45 of this podcast with one of the owners and you'll see what I mean. Deadeye Outfitters makes quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. Deadeye Outfitters has the only license for creating Boone & Crockett apparel. Use the JScott promo code and receive a 10% discount on all purchases at DeadeyeOutfitters.com.
Chris, one of the things I did way more this year than I ever have, is I actually carried my bugle, which is crazy for me, and I actually bugled in quite a few situations and had several situations where if I would not have bugled, it would not have called the bull in. One particular situation was worked in on these frenzied up elk and got in there pretty tight and cow calling. The bull was very interested in bugling, and the cows started answering back. I pretty much all season I used the Steve Chappell's trophy wife external reed call, and of course my hunter specialty Infinity latex. I like the single latex as my diaphragm, but several times got in there pretty tight, and this one time got in close, and the calves were answering and closing the distance and coming in. And once I kind of got their attention, and they, we're talking, they were probably 50 yards from us. The bull was on the back side of them. Once they started coming to me, when they got pretty close to Vince, I just bugled. And I'm not kidding you, that bull just came unglued and came right to me. I mean, the video is not great because he's right on the other side of this little oak thicket, literally 5 to 7 yards from me. But he came, Vince said, as soon as you bugled, Jay, because Vince had a great visual of the whole herd. I was back a little bit. That bull came right to me. I mean, not like left or right, like right to me. Right on the other side of the oak thicket, and was just bugling straight into me. And I used that bugle way more this year than I ever had, and it worked really, really well.
Well, and I'm looking at the time right now, but I don't know if we have time to talk about it now, but I was going to say one of the things that we probably should talk about, and obviously these next few years will really tell, but that is what you're talking about right now using the bugle is something that normally in previous years is not something that generally is very effective. In this area, it used to be that you could bugle and it wouldn't matter. They might bugle back at you, but they're not going to come into a bugle. Cow calls are where it's at. And I think for the large part it still is. But I did notice this year as well that bulls were starting to respond and actually come in and investigate bugles where in the past they don't. However, we also talked about the fact that it seems, me being a layman just outside looking in and new to Unit 9, it seems that there are some changes in maybe the age class structure of the bulls and how they're splitting the cows up, and maybe even the number of cows that are in the unit. There's changes going on in that unit to where it will be interesting to see how our tactics need to change along with that in order to be successful. And I think it'd be interesting to know your take on what you saw. I mean, the changes that you saw in that area, because the other thing too that I saw, I had the opportunity to go with a number of different people out there this year, and just observe other people. And I think a lot of guys are used to, quote unquote, the old Unit 9, where there's always a bugling frenzy. You always can find a bull. You can always stalk in, get close, make a couple calls, and boom, an elk runs you over. Well, there was a couple of mornings there where, no, that's not the issue. Or there, not even a couple. There was a lot of those mornings. No, that's not the issue. You have to go in there and work it and make something happen. And I think there were some people that just didn't know how to deal with that. Me coming from Colorado, where we are that almost every single year, where you've got to come in and just absolutely weasel something out and make something happen. So I kind of it didn't seem like any difference to me, but there were some guys that I think didn't know how to handle the changes that maybe are going on in the unit. What's your thought? I mean, from what you saw?
Well, first of all, I've got to brag on you a little bit. Monty, our good buddy Monty, love Monty to death. Him and his wife Pam have just opened their house up for me, and even my friends like you, this take you in like you're one of theirs. But Monty had hunted the first 7 days with John McClendon, who I've got to say has always been just a great friend of mine and always treated me with so much respect and such a great man. So happy that his client was able to harvest that giant bull. But the first 7 days, Monty hunted with John, and then Monty hunted some with his friend Jeff, and John ended up Levi. It's kind of full circle, but Levi McClendon was guiding the McClendon's hunter, and then Levi had other obligations, so John took over the last 7 days. And Monty is friends with a bunch of people up there and friends with John, so he hunted with John and hunted with his friend Jeff. And there was a morning there that Monty was going to be on his own, and he sent me a text and said, "Hey, can Chris come out and play?" And I thought that was funny. Love Monty. And I said, "Yeah, Chris would love to go out with you." And so I get a text. I hadn't even talked to you yet. I get a text after I woke up from my nap about 2:00, and it said, "I had an unbelievable morning. Call me." So I call Monty, and he's like, "That was crazy. That was crazy." I said, "What?" He goes, "They ran me over. They ran me over. There were elk everywhere, and you guys went out in the morning, and did you have 7 bulls that you called in, or was it 5?
No, I think there were 7 bulls, but the thing is, I think 5 of them were like 340, 350 bulls. It was,
yeah.
It was.
So I got to brag on you a little bit and tell you that, it was great having you in camp. And one of the things that I learned is, I used the elk module on Row Hunting Resources But it was also awesome to hear in person the assembly mew. I think one of the things that I think I've been guilty of over the years is I know how to make a bunch of the sounds, but I don't really know what I'm saying, or I don't really know what they're saying. And I thought one of the things that helped me was actually listening to the assembly mew, where you make kind of a long, kind of drawn out, and then a short response after that. And that's you witnessing cow behavior of a cow saying, "Come to me now."
Yeah.
Come here.
Yeah.
And I used that a bunch, and I think it's helped me. So, my hat's off to you, one, for going out with Monty and having such a great morning. And then actually the last few days you went out with Vince and I, and we had some great fun. And then the last day we tried to get Monty a bull, and you called that bull of Monty's in to 7 steps, I think, and about ran him over.
Yeah, no, and it was fun. The thing about that first day with Monty that I think was different, and I think why it was such a good time for Monty, was it was not your typical quote unquote Unit 9 morning, where when we got out there, sure, there was a couple bugles, but they were already moving up the mountain. They were already going to bed. And so whereas, maybe a normal approach would have been like, well, okay, we'll try to call, and maybe we call one of them in. What I found myself doing a lot this year, and obviously I will share most of this on the elk module, is I ended up having to be a little bit more aggressive with my calling than I normally do. And you heard it. I was doing a lot of lost mews, but I was doing a lot of whines. I was doing a lot of long mews. I was throwing the assembly mews in there as well. But, man, I was just really dragging it out and just really being a lot more aggressive with my calling than I normally am. And that is what kind of unlocked on a number of occasions, and I told you this and I told Monty this. When we got ready to set up, I said, I'm going to crank the burner on this one. I'm going to crank this up, and we're going to see what happens, because if I just do my general cow calls, if I do my chirps and my mews and maybe my lost mews and do your normal quote-unquote cow calling that the average hunter will do, there's no way you're going to call these bulls in. They're going to bugle at you, and they're going to walk to their bed. Gone. Bye-bye. So I told him, I said, number one, we're going to run. And that's something that he's really never done either. Not a lot of. When I said we need to go now, and I took off running, he kind of looked at me like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And so we took off, and there were several times we were running, and then there were a number of times where I was just putting the wood to it and just being very aggressive with my calling, and that is what kind of just helped him come unglued into where we just put bull after bull after bull in our laps. So it was a little bit of a difference for me, what I normally do down there, but it's something that I normally do in Colorado. But it's something that those guys don't normally experience down there or have to do. So it was kind of new. But then for you to be able to hear it too, it's something a little bit more than I normally do. But I'm telling you, that assembly mew, man, it's just deadly. When a bull is out there and he's interested and he wants to come, and you just turn around and say, "Come to me." When you watch their body language, when they drop their head, when they're looking at you, bugle, and you hit that assembly mew, and you watch them, their shoulders drop, their head drops, and here they come. They might just give you a couple mews on the way in. They're like, "Okay, I'm coming." It's awesome.
It is awesome stuff. I think, it's amazing. I think I learn stuff every day of the season, and I think I learn over a season, you end up learning so much. And I think one of the things that I notice from your style is I'm usually pretty passive, and I get aggressive at times, but when I'm chasing bulls, and a lot of it has to do with a lot of times I'm after a big bull, and I'm after something that I don't want to spook. And so I kind of tippy-toe around, whereas I noticed on the last day, it seemed like more of an approach of just go straight in there right at them, whether you spook them or not. And I think I can take away from that I at times am too passive. And I think that comes from chasing at times a lot of big bulls that I didn't want to blow out. And conversely, I think, you take that like with a turkey hunting mentality, that my mentality with the turkey is I'm either going to call it in or I'm going to spook it, one of the two. That I'm either going to get so close and call him right in, or I'm going to get too close and I'm going to spook him. And if I take that to the elk woods, I think I would be even, have more success than I already have. I think at times I'm a little too passive, just trying to stay back, not trying to spook them, as opposed to just, go right at them and get right in there tight on them.
I agree. I'm general, and again, I am generally that exact same way. And I will say that I know for a fact that I have not capitalized on opportunities that may have been there because I did not take a more active approach to the situations. But in this case, in a number of cases, this particular year, and I would stress that, this particular year in these particular areas, they would bugle, but they just were not going to come to you. And again, I think that was because we ended up in a situation. Now, there were times where you'd have bulls out there by themselves. They were really, really nice bulls that just had no cows. They were out there by themselves. And so, yeah, we can call those bulls in. But in a number of cases, it took a little bit of a more aggressive approach and a little bit more of an aggressive calling style, either to get that bull to finally break loose and come, or what I ended up seeing a couple times is it took a little bit more of aggressive calling style to actually get the entire herd to move your way and actually have all the cows and everybody come your way to where that bull finally felt comfortable enough to break in away from his cows, come in to check you out. So, we talked about this, I think, on a previous episode where, was it last year or the year before, you were up in Montana with Jason Hairston, where it was all bugling. I mean, bugling is what was required in that area. And I think what people really need to take away from some of this is elk are elk. Behavior is behavior. Their vocalizations are their vocalizations. But the localized pressure from humans, the localized the age class ratio, or the age classes that are in that herd, the sex ratio, the number of bulls to the number of cows that are in that herd, all the interspecific dynamics of the different populations are going to change how they respond to different calling techniques and tactics. So I've listened to some of your other podcasts where you're talking about the guys up in the Pacific Northwest where they use bugling a lot. And they have to because of the terrain and the environment and the population structure that they have up there. Whereas cow calling works, they really rely on the bugling. Whereas in general, normal years, previous years down in Arizona, it was completely the opposite. You might use a bugle from a distance to get a response so you know where to go. But once you work your way in, you lean heavy on the cow calls. And the same thing goes with me in Colorado. Most of the areas that I am in, I will use a bugle to get that initial locate, that initial contact to figure out where they are, but then I will sneak in and I will lean heavily on the cow calls. Every area is going to be different, and so if you have a full toolbox of tools and tactics that you can use and then have the ability to reach in that toolbox and use whichever one you need to, you're going to be a heck of a lot more successful in a variety of different situations. Like you said, you generally in the past would lean heavy on the passive side, one tool set, if you will. And we all can get ourselves into a rut, no pun intended, on what we feel confident in doing and how we call. I normally use what I call a targeted strategy: lost mews, long mews, assembly mews, and whines mixed in there to add that kind of emotion. I know that I naturally fall into that tactic. But that doesn't mean that tactic is always going to work in every situation. And so I think this year really opened the eyes of a lot of people that say, wait a minute, something is different. Something has changed. So now I've got to try something new. I've got to try a different tool to unlock the potential that is in front of me. So,
absolutely. before we conclude here, I just got to say the Steve Chappell Trophy Wife external, and I have the Matriarch too, and I think they're both great. They're both phenomenal, and for years I liked the Matriarch, but this new Trophy Wife call, I think it's the best external I've ever blown. You know, Vince was like, Jay, those cows really love that call. And he, you know, a lot of times I would let him go up front and then I would be back calling, 40 yards and wouldn't see some of the stuff. But he's like, you would call on that call and the cows, they'd lift their head, and he said they would walk towards you almost all the time. The cows would come to you. And, I just want to thank Steve for making that great call.
Yeah.
And I know you like his calls as well, and that's
and I know Steve. And number one, let me tell everybody, Steve doesn't owe me a dime, and I don't owe Steve a dime. We are friends, and I mean from previous working with Primos, but literally, I will admit, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, that I dismissed those calls for years. Because I simply looked at them and I said, well, they're just like a hyperlip single. They're like a Primos hyperlip single. It's a wide reed, the little castration band, blah, blah. It's like the hyperlip single. So I dismissed it. That was a huge mistake. They have a different soundboard. And we talked about it. They are easier to blow. They take a lot less lip pressure.
Way less pressure, and I think that could help a lot of people out, Chris.
Man.
I think the problem people have had with the externals is, having to apply so much pressure on the Mylar reed that at times, if it gets moisture or what have you, it starts squawking. Whereas on the Trophy Wife and the Matriarch, if you don't have to apply near as much pressure, you can make very good soft nasally sounds.
The subtle that's the thing that I loved about it is the ability to make subtle sound. Just sweet subtle sounds is awesome. And I love the Trophy Wife. I loved it. I used it, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But man, I love the Matriarch because I could just get the sweetest, just sexy sounds. So, and I think, it's up to you, but I definitely think people need to know where they can get those.
Yeah, if you go to Steve Chappell's website, I believe it's Chappell Hunting Productions, or maybe it's ChappellGuideService.com.
Chappell Guide Service is where I went. Chappell Guide is CHAPPELL.
Yeah, and you can go right on there and order it right off his website. We had the fortune, I've known Steve for a long, long time, and we actually used to be partners in the elk business. And, it was Chappell and Scott, and we had the fortune of having Steve camp right next to us this year, so it was great to see him. I do have to laugh. I came in probably after about the 9th day, and I told Chris, I said, Vince was laughing at me too, because that morning my call squawked on me a couple times, and I was semi-throwing a tantrum and throwing the thing going, what the heck's wrong? And Chris looked at it and goes, my word. I said, what? He goes, look how dirty that thing is. And I said, don't mess with it. Because it had blown so well. And he's like, and he rips the castration band off, and I thought my whole world just came unraveled. And he said, that sounded kind of funny if someone just picked up on the podcast. He ripped the castration band off of my external reed call and said, look at that thing. And it was just covered in dust. So he went over and actually just cleaned it, poured water all over it, put the castration band right back on, and immediately it was blowing really crisp calls. So I would say, guys, make sure your call's clean. I've always been so ginger and not wanting to mess with anything, keep everything constant, that I would never dare pull the band off and get it all wet. But as soon as it was clean, it was back to making great sounds. I want to thank you, Chris, for that, and I want to thank you for coming out this year, and I can't wait to see all the video that you capture for row hunting resources on the elk module, and see some of the lessons that you're going to put out. And I know I'm getting ready for the Arizona Super Big Game Raffle Desert Sheep Hunt leave here in a week, and I've got to get all my food and get everything ready, and I kind of shift over now from elk into full sheep mode, and got Frank Argo from California, and we're looking forward to having a great sheep hunt. So I'm kind of transitioning all my gear and stuff, getting ready for more of glassing intensive and more of the sheep strategy. And what do you have coming up?
Yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm sitting here looking at a pile of gear that I have to go through, put away, and then transition. We've got, for us here in Kansas, I mean, it's whitetail season, and so we've got a couple of hunters coming in, or several hunters coming in. Most of them are going to be focusing on that last part of October into November, but I've got to take these next couple of weeks and really get the game cameras going. We talk about game cameras, but I need to get game cameras going and tree stands put
private
up.
Land.
This is private ground that I manage for a landowner, and we run hunts on. And so, but yeah, that's what I'm getting. I mean, from now until literally January 10th 10th or 11th, somewhere around there. But beginning of January, from now to the beginning of January, my whole world is whitetails. So that's what I'm getting ready for.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thanks, and look forward to seeing you again. I want to thank you for all your help. And, I was able on Monty's Bull on the very last day of the season. I think we did something that people are going to really enjoy. I was able to video you pretty much in the whole boning out process, the gutless method of Monty's elk, and I look forward to us sharing that video with people, and want to give you a chance to let people know where they can find you on Instagram and Facebook, and obviously on your website. So would you do that?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that. Yeah, anybody can get a hold of me. It's just Roe Hunting Resources, ROE Hunting Resources, all one word. And so, yeah, I'm on Instagram under that, on Facebook under that. And the website is just rowhuntingresources.com, and we have that elk module. It's just all educational videos. It's the largest online educational video library, I think, ever assembled, and we're just constantly making it grow. And all the stuff that I've done this past year that I've got video footage of will go into that elk module for this next upcoming year. And so, and as always, if you guys are listening to this podcast, if you guys want to subscribe, we'll do a 20% off code for you. So just type in J Scott Podcast, and it'll knock 20% off of that for you. So, yeah.
And so, Chris, you've got your subscription, which covers elk, deer, and turkey. Is, I believe, with the discount is $40, and the elk module alone, is it $20?
Yeah, with the discount, yeah. Elk module itself is a 3-month subscription, and it's $20, and then the annual full access annual subscription that unlocks everything is with the discount, it'll end up being $40. So.
Yeah, and it was nice to have a bunch of people actually we ran into in Unit 9 say, "Oh, I'm a Roe Hunting Resources subscriber." So that was pretty cool to see that you've got a lot of people out there that stop by camp that have found it to be a great resource like I have. So
yeah.
Well, buddy, thanks for everything, and God bless you. And I'll be bouncing you some videos back and forth, and keep me posted on how your deer hunts are going.
We'll definitely do, and thank you as always for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Use the promo code JScott and receive a $50 KUIU gift card when signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more, go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.